recording there.
You ready,
it is
Henry?
Yeah, all set.
Yeah.
We're running. We're on.
Okay. Excuse me for the little delay, but good morning, everyone. Today, we're here to do a veterans interview with Mr. John Kaucheck? Kaucheck.
Perfect.
We're at the RSVP at St. Cletus, and Mr. Kaucheck, can I call you John?
Yes, sir.
Has been gracious enough to come in and tell us his history about serving our country. Good afternoon, John.
Good afternoon.
Let's get started.
Pleasure to be here
Good.
and an honor.
Well, it is an honor. It's an honor to have you. Let's start at the beginning. Tell us a little bit about yourself, where you were born, where did you grow up, go to school, and how you ended up in the branch of service.
Okay, I was born in Calumet, Michigan, July 9th, 1918. My parents, 2 brothers and 2 sisters, came to this country from Austria-Hungary in 1911. And my mother's brother had preceded them to Calumet, and my father didn't work in the mines, he was like a tool maker. And then 1924, when Ford started the $5 a day, we moved to Detroit. And back in those days, of course I was young and my brother was 3 years older, and we were renting down around the General Motors building. And we got kicked out of 3 houses because the landlord would come on different times of the month and you weren't supposed to have kids. So we finally bought a house in Highland Park. And that's where I grew up. I went to Liberty School there, the Catholic school, St. Benedict's. We lived west of Hamilton, and St. Benedict's was just east of Woodward on John R. So I went to Catholic school there 1 year, then I went to Liberty School through the 7th grade, and then 8th grade on to Highland Park High School. And
Look at the camera there and tell our audience this story so they can see how
and
beautiful
I
it is.
graduated from Highland Park High School in 1935, and the Depression was still on, and I was a good athlete and I had good marks, and I had scholarships to about 4 colleges in Michigan, UD, Central, Western, and Michigan State. And they all told me that I would need maybe $7 or $8 a month for spending money, and we couldn't come up with that because during the Depression, my father never got back to work at Ford's, and my brothers and sisters were working like 2 days a week, 3 days, but my mother was a good provider, and then she died shortly after thereafter. So then I wanted to play baseball, and I was in the Tiger Farm system for 1 year, played in Beaumont, and that was too rough, so I came back.
Did they pay you to play?
Yeah, I think I got like $70-some a month and $10 a day for subsistence for food. So I started working at Chrysler in 1936 in the mailroom. That was $65 a month. And over the years, I went to Chrysler Institute, and
That was in Highland Park?
in Highland Park,
Yeah.
before they moved on Oakland Avenue there,
Yeah.
before they built the tech center.
Right.
And I went from Dodge, Maine to the Warren Truck Plant, and then in 1943 I was in service for almost 3 years. And then when I came back from service,
Well, let's go through all the service, but how did you end up going into the service? This is,
okay, Pearl Harbor was on a Sunday afternoon, and Monday morning I went out to Selfridge Field. I wanted to enlist in the Air Corps. So they took my name, and there was a bunch of boys there, and we didn't do much on Monday, but they said come back on Tuesday. So Tuesday morning I was there bright and early, and I remember they had some rooms there, and I sat in, it was simulated like sitting in a cockpit. and this thing wavered back and forth and upwards and downwards, and did a lot of tests, I think about 6 or 7 hours, and then they said they would call me. So that was 1941. Of course, I had registered for the draft in 1940, I believe it was, and I worked at the truck plant then, and then of course, in a matter of a couple of weeks, we started building Army trucks.
Yeah.
And I was an expediter, and then my boss got me a deferment, because I never heard from the Air Corps.
And that was the Army Air Corps too, by the way.
That was the Army Air Corps.
Right.
And then when that deferment ran out, I was the sole provider of my father, so I got another deferment there. And then was it early in 1943 when I was reclassified, and that's, I told
Any
you
of
about.
your friends or family going into the service?
No, I was the only one from my family.
Okay.
But I had a lot of friends that were called up earlier, and a lot of those fellas went to Fort Leonard Wood. Never went overseas.
Ah.
So when I got drafted, then I went to that Army camp in Michigan.
Fort Wayne?
No, the other one. Near Kalamazoo there.
Okay.
And then I was there, and then I got on a troop train.
Well, let me stop you. In our pre-discussion before the tape, you told me there was a little complication involved here. And I don't want to forget her.
About the wedding? You want me to reveal that?
Yeah, you need to...
Okay. My fiance, we decided we'd get married even if I was going in service. So we were having instructions at St. Paul's Church. Father Horkin was the young priest there, and he just died recently. And one evening in August, Father Melvin, the pastor, popped in the room, and you want to know what's going on, and Father Horkin says, well, Eleanor and John are getting married. So he said, when are you getting married? I said, September 18th. And he said, what's your draft status? I said, I'm going in the military, in the Army, in October 4th. So he turned to Eleanor and he said, you have to get married. And she says, no, Father, we've discussed it, and we think if we're married before he goes, I know he'll come home safe. So
That was quite a decision.
so we got married on September 18th, and in fact, this Thursday is our our 65th wedding anniversary.
Wow.
And since Eleanor died, I have a mass for her on her birthday, on the day she died, and then on my birthday I have a mass for all the deceased Bessos and Kauchecks. And September 18th I have a mass for her. That's our wedding anniversary,
Wow.
September 18th.
Well, that's quite a decision to make, a young
No.
couple, but, you know, you discussed it.
And then I left on the 4th of October to Camp Custer.
Okay.
Camp
And what
Custer.
are you? Are you regular Army, Army Air Force? What?
I was drafted in the Army,
Okay.
and in Camp Roberts in California I was assigned to the artillery, 6th Red Star Infantry Division.
Tell me a little about your boot camp experience.
It was very good, but you couldn't leave the post at all during the week.
Right.
So fortunately, some neighbors of Eleanor had moved there about 10 years prior
Yeah.
to that time, and they opened up a store in Paso Robles. That's a little town about 12 miles from Camp Roberts. So Eleanor talked to them or called them, and they said, why don't you come out and live with us, and you can work in the store. And then every night she used to take the bus. Bus would come from the Army to Camp Roberts and bring anybody into the post. And then at 10 o'clock they had to leave. So we'd go to the PX, have something to eat.
Sure.
And then Saturdays at noontime we were all done. And you could go off you get a pass to go off the post from noon Saturday till 6 o'clock Sunday night.
Well, that eased the boot camp experience.
That,
And obviously you were in great physical shape, being a ball player.
And she was there all the time while I was in, and then we came home together, And then I was
What
home
was that
for
time frame? 1940 what?
1944,
1944?
1944,
Okay,
because that's when I finished my basic training.
okay.
And then I
No,
came,
no, you gotta back up a little bit. The war's almost over, isn't it?
no, war didn't end until 45,
Oh, okay.
August.
So
And-
when did you go in?
In 1943,
Okay.
in October.
Okay,
And then I was home for a month for delay en route.
yeah.
And then when I got my papers, I had to go back to Fort Ord. And I knew that was a port of debarkation.
So you've had a couple years of listening and seeing what the war's all about and
Right.
going on, and now you're into service,
Yeah.
so you're anticipating going overseas, or?
Well, I knew I was when I was at Fort Ord. And then you could get a pass to go into Carmel for 1 hour.
Yeah.
Because they never knew when you were going to be called.
Yeah,
So the third day that I was there in the morning, they took all my ODs away and gave me all summer stuff, so I knew I was going south someplace.
yeah,
So we got on a boat at the Fort Ord and went down San Francisco Bay, and then we got on another boat, and there was over 5,000 troops on that boat, and we didn't have any escort.
are you still in artillery?
No, I was assigned then to I was a replacement.
Okay,
And that boat sailed down along the coast of the United States in South America and then across because we had no escort.
oh.
And they felt that there was no Jap subs
Yeah.
that far
How
south.
was that ocean experience for a?
It was real good. It was, to take a shower, I'd get up about 4 o'clock in the morning and they had that bar soap with salt water.
Uh-huh,
And I was about 5 decks below, and the guy above me was like 2 feet on stretch things, you know, there were no beds, canvas.
yeah,
And then you lined up twice a day for your food, because there's over 5,000 guys in that boat.
yeah.
And then when I got to New Guinea, I
And
guess,
the ocean didn't bother you?
no, you could go on deck at nighttime, but you weren't allowed to smoke, you know, no lights.
Right.
And I didn't smoke anyway, but the guys that did. And it was warm. So when we got to New Guinea, I was assigned to headquarters battery. And that's where I was a private. And within a matter of months, I was a corporal. And then
What are you doing all this time? Physically training? or-
training, well, the war was pretty well over in Oro Bay,
Okay,
as far as the Japs were concerned.
Right.
But then we had a big conflict in Baffin Bay. MacArthur, back in World War II, we used to jump. Sometimes we would jump past detachments of Japs that we knew were there. But there was a big detachment in Baffin Bay, and that's where we had a lot of big combat there.
right.
Then the war ended pretty well in New Guinea. Then we went up to Sanchapor.
Anything special you want to tell me about your combat experience in New Guinea?
Not too much there. Our main enemy there were the snakes.
Ah,
A lot of poisonous snakes. And I remember when I got off the boat in New Guinea, of course there's no landing places, so the boat docked out in the harbor. And the tenders would come out maybe half a mile and bring us in. And of course it was all jungle.
yeah,
So the thing that I really remembered, they'd cut the trimmings off of 2 big coconut trees, and spread across there was about a 30-foot boa constrictor that they killed, and underneath was a big sign, "Welcome to the 6th Red Star Infantry Division, Artillery Division."
yeah.
I remember that. But at nighttime, there was the snakes that were, so I always wore the leggings even when I went to bed.
Right.
And fortunately, we never had a problem there. And
Were you
then,
being shot at or attacked at all?
well, we had 2 Piper Cubs assigned to, and they would fly over the jungle area, and when they would locate a detachment of Japs, and a lot of times I went with them because that's where my training was, and we called back the coordinates
Okay.
to some of the artillery.
You were in the Piper Cub?
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
and we would call back the coordinates, and then they would shoot artillery shells in there.
Now, did you visually see them, or
Oh.
did they shoot at you? So
No,
you
no,
knew they were
you,
there?
you could see them on the ground, they would wave to us, and they were probably pretty good guys, you know,
Yeah.
but they were part of the,
But you were a spotter.
yeah.
Okay.
And then at Maffin Bay, I remember I was in headquarters Battery that night, and I think I was a tech sergeant then. And about 2:30 in the morning, I got a call from the 53rd Field Artillery and Colonel O'Connor. He said there was a detachment of about 60 Jap tanks were going to break loose, and he was firing. He got an award for that. He was firing artillery ground level, like machine guns,
Right.
and just did everything, killed them all, you know, the
Yeah.
tanks and everything. And we were there for a while. You'll see some pictures in that books on LSTs where we were moving
Right.
up the New Guinea coast. And then we went to the tip of the island, a place called Sansapor. And we started training for an invasion, and we knew it was the Philippines. And then our division, 6th Red Star Division, and the 25th, we invaded in Lingayen Gulf, and that was the most spectacular thing I remember in my life. Was they woke us up about 4:30, and we went up on deck, and there was thousands of naval ships there, destroyers, cruisers,
Right.
and shooting these tracers, all different kinds of colors.
Right.
And then shortly after there were some kamikazes that there was a cruiser right next door to us, and we saw these kamikaze pilots, right? And if they'd have known there was all these troops on this troop ship,
Right.
they'd have probably, and there weren't too many of those. And there was one experience when we went ashore. We got on the LSTs and went in the shore, and in some of the foxholes there was still some Japanese, and right next to me I saw this Japanese boy, and he was bleeding, and he begged me to kill him. He was a graduate of Stanford University, went back to Japan, and then he was an officer.
He spoke English.
Oh yeah, he probably grew up in
California.
California, and he gave me his wallet with his wife and 2 children, and he asked me if I would send that to her. And he died right there.
Right.
And I sent that to his wife in Tokyo
After the war?
after the war, and I got a couple letters from her. And those somewhere in our travels disappeared because I wanted to give those to the military,
Oh, yeah.
and she appreciated that, you
Yeah.
know. So we had a lot of fighting on Luzon. There's a lot of pictures I have in here, and some of our encounters that I remember were the headhunters, and they were allies of us, and they didn't like the
They were the
Japanese.
natives.
They were the natives, and
Yeah.
they would cut their heads off, the Japs, if they could catch them
Uh-huh.
and get them, and put their heads on these. I got some pictures in there
Sticks?
of these poles that they put
Right.
them on. So then, as we were advancing on Manila, and I have some pamphlets in there that we dropped asking the Japs to surrender
Right.
in American and Japanese, that we would treat them well, but they wouldn't surrender. And finally, I think there was about 24,000 Japs that were killed on Luzon.
Right.
And then when the war ended there, I was there for a while, and I didn't have enough points. You had to have 85 points
Right.
for something to do with your age and service.
Discharge.
So I was in Korea till
So they sent you from the Philippines?
Philippines to Korea
Okay.
on occupation duty.
Right.
And I was a master sergeant, and that's General Hurtis had gone home, and Colonel Schwartz was the head of the division, and we really had a good baseball team, and these guys would bet no place to spend their money, you know, and they bet their money, and if you got a good hit or something, they want to give you money.
So you
And-
took the baseball skills and utilized them in your
Right.
service travels.
And I remember Stormy Weatherly, he was center fielder for Cleveland Indians,
Uh-huh,
and he still had some military service to do, and he came to Korea and he was assigned to our division.
yeah,
So I said, why don't you take over the team? He said, John, you guys got a good team, I'll just play. And then shortly thereafter, when the battery commander wanted to go home, he had enough points. Colonel Shorts, he said, how about staying, and I'll give you a field promotion to battery commander.
wow,
And I said, Colonel, if I didn't have this wife home waiting, I think I would stay,
right.
but I'm going home.
Were there Japanese in Korea? Was that part of the watching
There-
the prisoners?
And I have some pictures in there. We were in Seoul for a short while, and then from Seoul we went down, about 40, 50 miles to a little place called Cheonju.
Mhm.
And they gave us the school, that's where we were headquartered, in the school. And then right next to this area, there was a rice plantation, and a Japanese family that came there years ago. The father and his mother and their sons and daughters, and the old people died off, and the sons ran this plantation, and they had all Korean help, and they were really good to them.
Right.
And when the Japanese took over that area and found out about that, they killed that Japanese family that were so good to the
Right,
Koreans. And I remember there was a 9-hole golf course there that he had, and a 3-lane bowling alley and tennis courts. I didn't have any golf clubs and no bowling balls that our officers bowled, but I played tennis. I had a couple of tennis rackets and played tennis in my GI shoes. Wasn't the
Now,
greatest.
is the war pretty much over?
Oh, the war was over.
Okay,
Yeah, the war
okay.
was over, and Roosevelt had died
Okay, yeah.
before the war ended, and
Truman took over.
Truman took over. And I always tell people that I figured Truman saved my life. We were scheduled to go into Nagasaki,
Right.
and we had a lot of intelligence and pictures, and our division. And we figured that we would have had probably 70% casualties. And I thought maybe if the war hadn't, when they dropped the A-bombs.
Yeah. Without enough points, you're still participating in.
Yeah. And when they dropped the second A-bomb, that's when Tojo finally surrendered.
Right.
And then the war, and then Roosevelt died, and Truman was the president. I have a nice citation in there signed by Truman that we all got. So then I was in Korea for, I think it was in February when I finally got my papers to come home. And we were scheduled to land, and being a master sergeant, I was home on a Navy ship, so I slept with the officers. So I had a good bed, good food, made some good contacts. And we were scheduled to land in Seattle. And we encountered for about 11 days tremendous storms in the Pacific. So they rerouted us
So
to...
the boat ride wasn't pleasant coming back.
For that boat, I was up in front when the waves, and when it come down, it sounded like artillery shells going off,
Right.
real loud. So we landed
No
in...
seasickness or nothing?
No, I didn't get sick.
Wow.
It was pretty good. And I think we were like 17 days from Korea. And then they rerouted us to Southern California. And then from there I took the troop train to Fort Sheridan. And when I got to Fort Sheridan, I called my wife, and she and her brother...
Was she still in California?
No, she was home.
She came home?
She came home with me when I finished my basic training.
Okay.
And another little story, I think it's nice. When I left to go back to Fort Ord at Michigan Central Depot, in the big area, you could go so far. Then you had to walk down this long ways down where the tracks are,
Right.
and you couldn't go past there. And Eleanor was with me, and she asked the guy, I said, I know he's going overseas, can I walk down to the train station with him?
Right.
Where you get, he said, sure. And she gave me this envelope. And when I got on the train, I opened it up and there was some pictures she had taken. And I carried that with me all the time. So,
Yeah.
so that was another thing
Well,
that I
that,
remember.
when you had a memory or a little, you looked at
Yeah.
that picture and it,
And I still remember all of there was General Hurtis, Colonel O'Connor, Colonel Schwartz, he was the S3, Major Hyde was the S3, S2, Major Blank was the medical doctor for the division, and then Father O'Leary was the chaplain, and he was the parish priest from St. Mary's of Redford. So I used to serve mass for him all the time. And then the dentist for the division was Dr. Korbelak, and he was from Detroit area.
well,
So I
obviously
got-
all of this intelligence and memory you had,
Yeah,
from the good education you
got,
had.
I remembered all of that.
And,
So I got good dental care, and Father O'Leary said, I'll pray for every night. He says, you do that.
yeah,
So it was a good life, and I had a good experience in the service, and I was proud of it. And
but you made it through based on your intelligence and your
Well, I
athletic
was lucky,
skills
yeah.
and, being at the right spot at the right time and the love of your wife.
every once in a while on New Guinea, about 11 o'clock at night, the Japs knew where we were, and we were bivouacked along the ocean because
Right.
it was all jungle. And sometimes they would, bomb us,
Uh-huh.
and they flew so high any aircraft couldn't reach them. But the lights, we could see the plane. There'd be a single plane.
Yeah. What about snipers and stuff like that?
No, we never,
No?
we had guys at nighttime
Yeah.
on the post,
Yeah.
but we never, and every once in a while, like some days Colonel O'Connor would say, you want to go for a walk? I said, sure. So he'd have the cook make a couple sandwiches, and I had a carbine, and he'd give me a revolver,
Uh-huh.
and we'd walk out in the jungle, maybe 4, 5, 6, 7 miles,
Yeah,
and once in a while we'd come across a Jap that was sick,
right.
and we would take him back with us and give him medicine and feed him, and they would interrogate him. I don't know what they'd finally do with him.
Humanitarian too.
Yeah,
That's excellent.
so, but the worst fighting was on Luzon. We saw a lot of guys get killed, and we killed a few too, so. But that's war, I guess.
It is war. So
So,
now you're back here,
I'm back here. I worked for Chrysler 43
got
years.
discharged,
Got discharged in,
hug and kiss your wife, say, honey, I'm home.
oh, I'm home, yeah. And after 1 year, we had our first child.
Ah,
And he's retired now. He was the executive at Chrysler. And my other son's still working. He's worked for Hewlett Packard.
you had
He's
2 sons.
2 sons.
So where'd you end up going to work and doing what? And
I
did you go back to
started,
Chrysler's?
went back to Chrysler's, yeah. And I worked for them for 1957. I became an executive and was practical manager in the engine division.
Uh-huh.
In 1974, I went to Iran for 2 years for them. I was there 74 and 75 when the Shah was still there.
Yeah.
And we had a good life there. The civilians, they were good to. And there's the military, the officers dressed in plain clothes. And they knew who they were. And the almost 2 years that we were there was like 5 officers got killed.
Wow.
But the civilians, they didn't bother. They didn't bother us. So, and they started a automotive company there with Chrysler in the Roots people in England,
Uh-huh.
and they built a small car there. They called it the Paycon 4-door sedan. So we got their assembly plant running, the engine division, and the foundry.
Uh-huh.
So we had good life there for a couple of years.
Well, you're skipping a few years here. I mean, there's gotta be something happened between your discharge and all of this.
Well, I went back to work and went back to school at nighttime
Where'd you go to school?
at UD,
UD.
night school in the Chrysler Institute.
Yeah.
and then we had our second child, and then I moved to Grosse Ile. That's where the Trenton engine plant was.
Okay.
So we had a.
The family moved down there too, or you just commuted down there?
No, we bought a house down there
Okay.
on Grosse Ile.
Yeah.
And the Trenton engine plant was right across the river in
Yeah.
Trenton there. So we had a good life there. And then 1980, my mother-in-law lived with us, and she died earlier in 1980. And I had going on 43 years with Chrysler, and they offered me. My boss didn't want me to leave, but they offered me a good package.
Yep.
So.
How old were you then?
62.
62.
And I taught my wife earlier how to play golf, so we were golfers. And then her father was born in Italy, a little small town of Folletto, which is about.
Let's turn this around. Okay, sorry for the interruption.
It was about 30 miles north of Turin.
Uh-huh.
So we visited there 4 or 5 times. I got a book, learned a little
So
Italian.
you enjoyed your retirement journey?
Oh yeah, 'cause we were great travelers.
Yeah.
And we liked to drive. She liked to. She didn't go much for airplanes, but we traveled all over America. And one of my daughter-in-law, she was Canadian, and we took our granddaughters out to Vancouver Island one year. That was a great trip.
Yeah.
Left them there, then my daughter-in-law came out and got them. They flew back home, and we toured Canada. But we were always on the go someplace. We were good travelers.
Well, let me get some of the memorabilia that you brought in so that we can talk about some of the things in your book here. And let's start with the medals.
This I really treasure.
Let's, well, you're gonna have to kind of
Okay.
see if Henry can get that in there pretty good. Oh, yeah. Now, there's a picture of you
That's a picture of me in Korea
in Korea.
before
And,
I came home.
I believe you've got some of your medals listed here.
All the medals. That,
The World War II Victory Medal, the Asiatic Pacific Campaign Medal, and I think there's 4 stars there, so 4 different campaigns. You had an Army Good Conduct, so you
Right.
behaved yourself.
Right.
You batted about 375 probably. You have some probably stars that were part of your insignias and stuff.
Right.
You were a Master Sergeant that's designated, and there's slight little maps of some of the areas that you were at.
New Guinea, the Philippines, and Korea.
You have a Philippine Liberation ribbon.
Right.
With a star. Did you ever get to see MacArthur in your travels?
Never saw MacArthur.
Really?
Never saw MacArthur. He was close by many, many times, especially in New Guinea and shortly after the Philippines.
You have a little honorable service medal there also.
Right.
Did you join any service organizations when you got out?
After the war, my wife's father, he was in World War I.
Oh,
And the Elger Post in Grosse Pointe, he was a commander there. I never knew him. He died before I met my wife. But I was a member of the Elger Post there for quite a few years, and then when we moved to Grosse Ile, I kind of gave that up.
yeah. Now you also have brought in a memory book, and this is going to be a little hard to look at, but you have your military records stated here. You also
Right.
have some.
That's when I was when I got
Is that
the.
you on top?
That's me there. When I got the winning hit on playing for Carp Cove,
Oh,
drove
man.
in the winning run.
Detroit Evening paper.
That's the Detroit Times. I don't know if you
Oh,
remember
the
that.
Detroit Times. I
Was
remember that.
2
Evening
cents.
Times.
2 cents then. And that was, of course, we played on Sundays, and that picture was taken, and my sister had cut that out of the paper, and I didn't know that. And then years later, she gave it to my wife.
And there you are. There's a little picture of you as a spectator at a little golfing event.
down in Florida where we lived.
Ah.
They had a charity thing.
Where'd you live in Florida?
At Plantation, that's just south of 3 miles from Venice.
Ah, yeah.
So we stayed there 8 months, and then we had a place in Mishway just below Gaylord for
Now,
4 months.
did your wife write this, My Soldier Darling?
She did this, and here's something here last November. I'm a Republican. John McCain had a town hall meeting last November
Yeah.
at Andiamo's there on 14 Mile Road.
Yep.
So I took this book there, and I talked to him.
Uh-huh.
So he said, "What do you got?" So I said, "I got my war book. Would you autograph it so you can see?
It says John.
Thanks for your service,
Yeah.
John McCain."
There it is right there. Pretty impressive. Pretty impressive. Hopefully the future President of the United States.
I hope so.
And here you are. There's some shots of you and your wife.
That's in Camp Roberts in California.
Yep. This is an impressive book. Who put this together? Your
My wife did that.
Wow.
Whenever she could get film here,
Yeah.
or sometimes the special services overseas, you know.
Was it at a
Right.
premium film?
Oh yeah, because Eastman Kodak was making all film for military.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
So there was no commercial film for cameras.
Yeah.
But every once in a while, and she would send me a roller, and it was all black and white. There was no color film.
Here's your original Master Sergeant stripes.
Right. Okay. You know, she put, and that's our insignia, the 6th Red Star Division. And we had the most continuous days of service in the South Pacific. We had 112 days
Wow.
without a break.
That's
And that's in there, the Cockatoo, that was our division paper.
uh-huh.
That's written up in there. And this is a leaflet that we dropped on Luzon,
Yeah.
asking the Japs to surrender. And the back part is all Japanese.
Ah. Those are just priceless.
Oh, I think so.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
And you kept them.
I kept them. Yeah. And whenever I get film and take some pictures, I would send them home, and then she would put them in this book.
Here's some natives.
Some natives. You can see some of them don't
Did
have
they
any
look
clothes.
like? No. Those were the headhunters and stuff.
No, no.
Oh, okay.
There's some pictures later on in there of the headhunters. And they, and of course, the Japanese didn't treat them good, but we did. And they would wash our clothes and stuff like that.
Wow. There you are in your famous physique.
Right. I was 175 when I got to New Guinea,
Uh-huh.
and in 1 month I was 165. Because the temperature never got below 100, and the humidity was never below 110.
Sweating.
Oh yeah, day and night. But I stopped at 165. I never got any lighter. You know, I never lost any more weight.
And here's some pictures of towns in the Philippines. And did you run across any prisoners, American prisoners of war in the Philippines?
About an hour after we landed on Luzon, was
Yeah.
at Cabanatuan,
Uh-huh.
where the prisoners were.
Yeah.
And some of those guys, they got on their knees to high, said, "Hey, come on."
Yeah.
And some of those fellas, their waists were like my wrists.
Ah.
You know, they'd been prisoners almost 4 years,
Yeah.
but still alive.
Oh, unbelievable. Unbelievable. Well, that just shows you what American soldiers are made of.
Yep.
Some more pictures.
And some of those are our dinners, you know, Thanksgiving dinners and
Do you
Christmas.
believe part of your faith helped
Pardon
you
me?
get through this?
Oh, I'm sure, yeah. I had, I didn't bring it with me. I still have my rosary that I had overseas.
Yeah.
Still use that today, you know.
That's good.
And of course, I met Father O'Leary about a month after I was on New Guinea. And when I found out he was from St. Mary's in Redford, even after the war, when we lived on Gros Seal, when he was still alive, we'd have him come to our house for dinner.
Yeah. Are these Korean people here? Or,
With us, yeah, see, does he have a stovepipe hat
Yeah.
there? Okay, the head of the household back then,
Uh-huh.
and when he went out in public, he wore that cape and that big hat,
Okay.
and that designated him as the head of the household.
Well, there was no love lost between the Koreans and the Japanese.
None whatsoever, yeah. We had good rapport with him.
Some more small snapshots. A picture of Kyoto and some, thing. And you saved all these or sent them home?
I would send the film home,
Yeah. Oh,
and
okay.
then my wife would get them developed, and she may say she started this in 1944.
Yeah.
So the pages, someday I'm gonna get some new paper and transport, this is a Japanese beer.
Yeah. And you said your granddaughter wants this book.
Abby, yeah,
Yeah.
the youngest, not the youngest, she's a nurse, so I promised it. And this
Here's
was
your
our,
cockatoo.
this is our division paper, the Cockatoo. And
Printed
that,
daily? Or
every day, every day.
Keep you up to speed on what's
On
happening.
what's going on, and of course they had reports from what was happening in the European theater, and of course, that ended before the
Yeah.
Asiatic theater.
Because I believe a lot of those guys in Europeans, they thought they were coming over to the
Oh,
Pacific.
yeah, I'll bet.
So, how many friends from Michigan went with you? Or did you know many guys? Or?
I met a fellow there, a fellow named Al Pernoff in California. That he lived on Crest Avenue, and he was a lawyer.
Yeah.
And we introduced our wives through mail, and then when we came home, we became good friends. And Al, he applied for judge advocate school, and when we were on Luzon, he got called and he came back home,
Uh-huh.
and he went to judge advocate school in Washington, and then he was one of the lawyers in the Nuremberg trials.
Right.
And Al's deceased now, and his wife.
So did you get the chance to run across Mr. Ayakoka when you were in prison?
Oh yeah,
Yeah?
yeah, knew him real well.
Yeah, I bet.
Knew him real well because my son, when he came to Chrysler, my son was in finance, and he was one of about three and a couple of guys from Goldman Sachs that went all over Europe trying to borrow money because they couldn't borrow money here.
Right.
And then when that was all straightened around and they got the money, and then of course the government made it out real well because they had all those warrants, and we paid off the debts in a matter of about 2 years' time.
Yeah.
And then my son was vice president of finance for the sales and marketing group.
Wow.
So
So I'm not playing with kids in the alley here,
Yeah.
am I?
and I was retired.
Yeah.
But they had planes at Pontiac Airport,
Huh.
and he used to go to New York about 3 or 4 days before the board meetings.
Yeah.
And he would go over what they were going to discuss at the board meetings, and then he stayed till the Germans came in, and then he retired. He couldn't stand it anymore.
Is there anything that you remember that you want to say? Are you?
I think I've talked too much.
No, absolutely, never, never.
But I told you about some of the incidents, and say it was a good life, and I thank God that got me through safe.
I am certainly honored to have met you and to
Yeah.
heard your story, and I know what you're called the greatest generation, and I totally agree with that.
Yep.
You're a veteran.
I got that book home that Tom Brokaw wrote. It's
Oh yeah,
a great book.
yes it is. My favorite movie is Saving Private Ryan.
Right.
So I can understand all of that, but
So we just, as I say now, we play it ear by ear. I look forward to tomorrow.
Well, you made it till 90, so that's
Right.
pretty good.
Henry,
So-
you have any questions for
Yeah.
him?
And I'm shooting for 100, so
Well,
we'll see.
As
But you
far as
never
I can
know.
see, you're gonna make it.
10
Yeah.
more years is easy to do.
When God calls, you never know.
Well,
My
God
wife,
says keep playing golf and enjoying yourself.
my wife was healthy, never sick a day in her life. The only time she's in the hospital when the 2 boys were born.
Right.
And then she started suffering with dementia 10 years ago.
Oh,
and she said we got to move closer to the kids. One boy and his family lived in Fenton, and the other one in Ann Arbor. So we bought this house in Macomb Township, where I live now. It's all on one
You
floor.
come back from Florida.
So we sold everything. Sold Mishway up north in Florida, and then she had good days and bad days with that dementia, and she was on a pill called Aricept. It's
Yeah.
pretty well known now. And I gave her that pill every day about 3 o'clock. And one morning she called me. I was up already. She started screaming. She couldn't breathe. So I called 911, and they took her to Beaumont and gave her oxygen, and then said we're going to run some tests. So then they decided to do a catheter on her. And they said that would take about 6 hours. And my one, Pete, the oldest one, he was way up in Canada fishing. And I called my other son, and I know where he came. And the doctors came down, and they said that she's got 2 arteries, main arteries, that are 100% blocked and one 70%. And the mitral valve that cleanses the blood, it goes from the heart to the brain, that was badly damaged. So there was 3 surgeons from Beaumont. What's the alternative? If she wasn't suffering from dementia, they would only guarantee 50% on that mitral valve if she would survive. The arteries be no problem. What's the other alternatives? Is we can give her some medicine. Either way, maybe 3 years at the most. So we decided on the medicine. And she was good. She was good. And the Saturday before Memorial Day was the 28th of May. Saturday morning she called me and said, let's go to the hospital. I said, aren't you feeling? We played golf that day before, because I asked the doctors, how about our lifestyle? I said, do whatever you've been doing. So we go play golf, maybe 3 holes. She said, let's go home. We go home. And she liked to walk. Maybe sometimes we'd walk 2 blocks, 3 blocks, sometimes 1 block. She called me that Saturday morning, so I says, okay. We went over to Beaumont there on DeQuinder, and a fella came out with a wheelchair. I said, no, I'll walk in. So you go park the car. And so when I came back in, they had her in a little room, and the doctor says, we're going to run some tests, and I'm going to sedate her. So after a couple hours, he said she's dehydrated and she's anemic, so we're going to give her some stuff for the dehydration and for being anemic. And that was Saturday afternoon, and then she never opened her eyes again. Sunday, she got a little worse, and we were there all day, and her blood pressure would go up to 220, drop down to 100, and her heartbeat would go up and down. And Father Ken, my nephew, he came a couple times on Sunday and anointed her. And then Sunday night about 11 o'clock, the doctor says, why don't you go home? She was unconscious.
Yeah.
So we went home, and then we went there early Monday morning, which was Memorial Day. Right. And Father Nichols, not Father Nichols, Dr. Nichols from Beaumont, young doctor, he was there all day. And Father Ken came a couple of times and anointed her, and we would go in and out of the room, And I was in the room about 5 to 6 with my oldest son, Pete, and the nurse says it won't be long now, and 6 o'clock on the button. The thing went right down to 0. So you closed her eyes, and that was it.
Well, I know she's waiting for you.
And the doctors assured me she didn't suffer. I don't think she did,
No.
So
And she's waiting for you like she did.
I only
back from the war.
I always tell everybody to get a little humor out of it. Her being Italian, and she was good looking, and you got that Dean Martin and Sinatra up there in heaven. So I always tell her every night, you behave yourself.
Yeah.
You can go out and enjoy yourself, but behave yourself.
I want to thank you for
Yeah.
your interview. I want to
Well-
definitely thank you for your service. I'm
Yeah.
honored to know you, and God
Well,
bless
it's
you.
been a
John.
pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay. That's it, Henry.
Okay.